Welcome to the Age UK Isle of Wight podcast, featuring Island Voices, brought to you today by Claire Shortman in association with Slingshot Records.
Hi, I'm Claire. I'm Digital Inclusion Officer for Age UK Isle of Wight, and today we're talking to Frank. Frank lives in Cowes, and we're just going to hear a little bit about your life, Frank. If you want to tell us a bit.
Okay.
So, what age were you when you left school?
I was when I left school, I was 14. That was the school leaving age.
Yeah. And where were you at school? You know, where did you live?
I lived in a place called Epping, just outside of London. Well, it's 20 miles outside the east end of London.
Yeah. And family? You know, did you have brothers and sisters?
Well, no, I was put in a home when I was born. It wasn't until late in life. In those days, it was a stigma we was born out of wedlock.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in them days, the mother was put away in a home. I found this in later years through having too many children. She couldn't read and write because, I mean, I think my education was probably worse.
Yeah.
So she couldn't read and write, and she went and worked in the hop fields, summer holidays for the old people in London. Well, she wasn't old then, but she met this guy in the hop fields from Epping, apparently, and he could come down and be my housekeeper. So that's how it come about, me living in Epping, I presume. And then she was took away. I don't know the story of it, but she was put away, and I didn't know this till later in life. Found I had a half sister in London, and she told me the history of it. She's 20 years older than me, and she said she's put away for having too many children,
Right.
which they done in those days. If you had illegitimate children, you know.
Did you ever meet her, Frank?
I never met her. No.
No.
I tried to look for her in London, in the east end of London, when I was on the ships. And that time she'd already died. But I did find the grave where she was buried in the east end of London. And I only found that by going in Somerset House in London.
Yeah.
I'd done a lot of inquiries myself. And when I went there, they gave me this name and that, and I went in the cemetery in East End of London for, I think it's Poplar or somewhere like that. It's a long while ago now. I was only in my 30s when I looked for this grave. And and all it was a curbstone, you see, about as big as that mat over there. And there was a man's name there. I said, that's the wrong grave. I went back to the office. That's the wrong grave, I said. And they said, no, that's the right grave, but there's 3 people buried in that grave.
Wow.
And they said what they call a pauper's grave. There was no money to bury her. And I was kind of disgusted. I was, thinking, but that's how it was in the east end of London. I'm talking about and at that time it was all sunk, by free interments in the grave. So I thought that's disgusting. I went and looked around all the graves all the way round. It was like the mountains of Mourne, And I thought to myself, God, but of course nobody, you understand, they had no relatives or they didn't go in once. That was it. That was the end of life. So I think I give £10 at that time at the office to have the grave filled in.
Yeah.
Because it all sunk. And I might have gone back there once. I don't think I did. I don't think I went again. But it was just to have the grave filled in because it all sunk.
Okay.
And but all around it, all the graves was like that. And I thought to myself, it's disgusting, but people never had no money, you see.
Yeah.
And when I found later years, found I have a brother, and I didn't meet my brother until I was 42.
Wow.
So we were never brought up, you see. We was all separated when I was born.
What was that like meeting your brother?
Well, he was 4 years older than me,
Yeah.
and I don't know. The system in those days, they separated families. They came together now. You see what I'm talking about?
Yes.
They try and keep families, but they didn't in the days. if you was young, I was the youngest, you see. But I didn't know that. It was later in years I found out she had 14 children, and that's why she was put away, because she had too many children. But there was apparently her first husband was killed. I learnt this from my elder sister in London. Her first husband was killed in an accident. So then I don't know if she married the second guy or not, but she had 2 children by him. And of course they was older than me. I didn't know them either. And it wasn't until I found this oldest sister in London, was 20 years older than me, half sister she was, and she said that she told me the history of it. And she's put away in the workhouse, as they called it in them days. Yeah. I mean, it's disgusting what they done years ago, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. They talk about the worst as, I mean, I could tear my hair out sometimes looking at TV and what they complain about. And I think, well, God, in those days we had no help whatsoever. Yeah. You know what I mean? They've come a long way since them days, I can assure you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I mean, even probably before my time, it was disgusting how generations that it was brought up, especially in the cities.
Oh.
You know? So I don't know, you know, that's how I see life, you know.
So just to tell us how you got into the army then, Frank, as you...
Well, I was called up.
Okay.
I was called up, you know, I mean, everybody... When you got 18, just after the war, and of course that went on from the war years onwards, you was automatically called up and you had to go in the army for, I think it was the duration, well, you didn't know how long it was going in for. My group was 76 group, but I was only demobbing 42 or something like that. And I thought, God, I've got to, you know, be forever getting there. And all you were singing when you went in, because you getting out, you know what I mean? Because you didn't like the atmosphere, you know, coming from cities. So you were thinking, oh God, I've got to do to get out. So 42, I think, was getting demobbed. And they'd done through the war years, you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And they were guys probably in their 30s, I suppose, because I was only, as I say, 18. You know, these guys had been through the war.
And what was your first job in the army? What did you do?
Well, first time you do square bashing and all that, the 6 weeks training, which they all have to do. And then I thought to myself, I had a mate that lived opposite me, and he got in the army catering corps. And he said, you don't do any square bashing and all that stuff, you know, that you have to do when you go in the army. And you get out of guard duties. He said, he said, so I thought, well, that's easy. So I put down for the army catering corps. Okay. And of course I had to go for a course in Aldershot.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Catering course. And of course, you eventually pass and you're a cook. And then of course, my first period was, I was posted down in Cornwall, somewhere in Cornwall, a place called Bude.
Yeah.
That was my first posting. And then I thought, I want to get out of here. So I put in for overseas posting.
And where was that?
Benghazi in Tobruk.
Right.
Wasn't it Tobruk, you know, in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And of course that's I put in to go overseas because I thought, you know, get away from the bull, as they call it, you know, in the army. So I put in for this, and of course so I went. I ended up in Benghazi. Well, at first they stuck me in Malta, but you went on ships in them days. You didn't fly anywhere. Troop ships took you nowhere. So I remember the first ship I was on going through the Bay of Biscay, and they had hammocks and put those hammocks up. And guys was being seasick, and it was in January time, you know. Ooh. And it's pretty rough going through the Bay of Biscay, you know.
Yeah. It's famous.
And I'd never been on a ship before, and I'd say guys was being sick, and you know, it was about 36 hours in the Bay of Biscay going through. This is all to get into the Mediterranean, you see. Yeah. And they dumped us in Malta, and I was in Malta for about 6 weeks, I suppose, and then I went over to Benghazi. Tobruk, and then we travelled along the coast road. I remember in them trucks in the winter time, freezing cold it was, you know, the wind was blowing like hell. Anyway, so then I got posted to, as I say, Benghazi, and I was working in a sergeant's mess or something like that, cooking for, you know, NCOs and that. And I had about 8 months to do, and then I was demobbed. I got out of the army and I come back and I couldn't settle in England.
Yeah.
You know, but I'd had a taste of travelling by then.
So where did you go
And
next?
so
Where-
I went to sign on again. I went to a place called Romford in Essex
Yep. No.
and signed on for 3 years. And I always said it was the hardest £75 I ever earned, because you got £25 for each year's service. But you had to do it first before they give you the 75 quid, you see. They give you, I think I got a sweetener. I think they did give me £25 to start with. I'm not sure, it's a long while ago. I was only 21, I presume, when I went home to Romford in Essex. Anyway, and this is when I went back in the army again, you see. Because by that time I know what it was. I had no place to live, that's what it was.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, well, if I get back in the army, at least I've got me, you know.
Yeah.
Because where I was living before the war, the daughter got married and she didn't want me going back there because I wasn't related, you see. So I had no place, you see. So it was a godsend I got back in the army because it gave me accommodation. That's all I was looking for.
Yeah.
And I thought at least I'd get me food and all that. So I got back in the army again, as I say. So then I put him for overseas posting. I said I had a brother in Malaya, of all places.
What was that
It
like?
wasn't my brother, of course, but matter of fact, this old lady that took us in, she brought him up as well, you see. I wasn't adopted or anything like that, just fostered. So she took me in when I was about 2 years old. I stayed there till I went in the army, you understand?
Ah, okay.
And when I went in the army, they said, her daughter said, oh, you can't come back here to live, you know. And so there's luck with it, I got back in the army again. So it was accommodation, that's all I was looking for, you know.
So did you get to go to Malaya?
And pardon?
Did you get to go to Malaya?
Yeah, I did, because I said I had this brother, but, you know, because he was a different name to me, but I said he was my brother. So I eventually got a posting. And then when I was in Malaya, the Korean War broke out. So they stopped regulars. I'd signed on for 3 years. So that meant I had to do a year longer than I should have done, you know, when I was in Malaya. I had to do a year longer. And of course, the other guys that done the national service, they said, oh, that'll teach you to sign on, you know, you've got this
Yeah.
slung at you all the time, you know what I mean? And of course, they were getting sent home after they'd done the 2 years or 18 months. They increased it from 18 months to 2 years when that trouble was on in Korea and that, you see.
Yeah.
I'm going back to I'm pretty sure it was in the 50s, I don't know, you know. So I got out in 1952.
Okay.
So it must have been, I went out to Malaya in 1949.
Okay.
And I left Malaya in 1952. So I'd done about 3 years out there. And of course, I don't know if you know, it's right on the equator.
Yeah.
So of course you go out there and it's hot. If you ever look at them photographs, all the guys are, you know, just bare buff from the waist down. And when I went out, it was all prickly heat and everything, you know. And of course your blood has to thin down. You understand what I'm talking about? And the guys used to stand out in the rain. You get them tropical rains there. Rains 2 or 3 times a day because you're on the equator, and you stand out and it helps the prickly heat.
Yeah.
But anyway, what I'm saying is, so of course, being that I was a cook then, so I was cooking for these guys and that. So
Can I ask, Frank, what kind of food were you cooking?
pretty basic, I can assure you. A lot of the stuff was pom, as they called it in them days, and it was, and it ain't like today where you mix that potato up nice white.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
Where you mix some water or milk, whatever you do, comes nice and white and that. Well, there it was like desert sand, I can assure you, in the old days. And that we was getting that, and there was a shortage of everything was shortage. And dehydrated cabbage and dehydrated carrots and all that stuff. And the stuff used to come in, they used to send you a bloody carcass of mutton in, you know, from Australia. We was getting most of the stuff in Malaya come from Australia, you see. So you had to make do what was.
Yeah.
And of course, I was getting all complaints, and I used to say to the guys, they used to say, God, what's this crap, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, and I say, well, I'm doing my best, what I've got, you know. I mean, I said, I'm only supposed to keep you alive, I ain't supposed to make you fat. You know, all them insults. I was giving back, it was all in good humour, you know.
How